This morning I'm going to do a quick video on how to use tofu. So the first thing that we need to do is slice the packet open and actually wash it to get rid of all of the juices that it's been sitting in. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it up into the desired pieces. A serve of tofu is 1/3 of a block, but for the sake of symmetry, I'm going to cut it into quarters. And what we're going to do this morning is we're going to do a serve for tofu scramble and then also some for some marinade. So I'm going to put in some tamari and some sriracha. So what we're going to need to do first is actually press the tofu. So what we're going to do is take a tea towel or the paper towel and you're going to lay it down, place the tofu pieces down once we've cut them, place this over the top. You can either apply your own pressure to it or you can sit some books on top of it and leave it for half an hour. But if you are in a hurry, I would just recommend adding a lot of pressure to remove the juices from the tofu, from the excess water, and that way it's going to absorb a lot more flavor in the cooking process. So with my tofu scramble, I still want to press it, but I'm not going to press it for as long because it's generally something that I want to make in the morning and I want to eat it within like 10 to 15 minutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to just press it by ourselves. So we're still going to cut it into slices because that way it's going to press easier, but then we're going to take those slices and we're going to crumble them in our fingers. What we're going to do while the tofu is pressing is store the rest of the tofu that we're not using. So what we're going to need is a container. We're going to fill it all the way up with water. We're going to submerge the tofu in, airtight, nice and closed, pop it in the fridge, and then when we use it during the week, take the tofu out that we're using, change the water, refill it, and chuck it back in the fridge. It's nice and easy and it'll keep it fresher for longer. So as you can see, the tofu is under there's about a centimetre of water on top, and that's going to go in the fridge with the lid on it. So now that I've gotten most of the moisture out of the tofu, what I'm going to do is create the tofu scramble mix, and I just follow the teaspoon rule. So what I'm going to do is put a teaspoon of all my flavourings in there, mix it together, I'm going to sit it aside, and then I'm going to do my veggies. Oh, and don't use these anymore, wash them. With the almond milk, I'm just going to do about, I don't know, maybe 1/4 of a cup. And then some salt and pepper as well. So now that the tofu's done, I'm basically just going to set it aside and it's going to set in and marinate a little bit, and then I'm going to chop up all my vegetables and then I'll chuck it on the stove. So as you can see, I've been pressing the tofu under the pots and pans. That's just to add a little bit more weight and to get as much moisture out as possible. But we're going to marinate it in some tamari. I've got about 2 tablespoons there, and we're going to do about 1 teaspoon of sriracha as well. So just in a bowl, mix it together. So try and have it as submerged as possible. You can either put it in the fridge with some Glad wrap over it or something like that to protect it, and you can sit it and cook it at dinner time so it's marinating for a really long time. Otherwise, just chuck it in for an hour or so, or you can just chuck it straight in the pan. It's completely up to you. So what we're going to do to cook the tofu scramble is place some oil in the pan with the mushrooms and the onion. They're going to take the longest to cook. Then we're going to add in the broccolini and the sun-dried tomatoes, saute them down a little bit, and then we're going to add the tofu scramble mix. We're going to chuck a little bit of water in and we're going to simmer it on a nice low heat. This part is really important, so don't skip it. And we're going to turn it right down because we want to cook out some of those heavy flavours that I've got in there. So then we're just going to cook it nice and slowly for about 10 minutes. Alright, and finally we're going to do the tamari tofu that we marinated earlier. So I'm going to heat the pan, we're going to use some sesame oil, and then we're going to just add the whole thing in, including the dressing, and just let it cook, brown it on both sides until golden.